So what I'm basically going to talk to you is about SharePoint Syntex and Power Automate. It's a funny story the way I got into this particular um, project is I was talking to a client and they were looking at certain vendors, and I work mainly with law firms. Um, and I have some like big law firms who are using this particular tool. So one of the law firms was looking at one of the vendors to basically extract data from documents and then basically put it in a SQL database and then run Power BI reports and so forth. And coincidentally, I was at one of the conferences, and initially I was involved only from a SharePoint perspective and a Azure perspective. And for some reason, the vendor solution would not work for them. And I was like, hey, I just saw this great solution and maybe we can work with that. So that's how I got involved with this thing. And we have deployed this solution at multiple locations. Um, so basically what SharePoint Syntex is, it's basically an add-on. Um, oh, this is just about me. This is my LinkedIn profile. I also have a YouTube channel where I have uploaded some Azure cloud related videos and the Power Automate as well as SharePoint Syntex. So basically, what is SharePoint Syntex? It's a Microsoft 365 service. Um, I'm not sure how many of you have used Azure AI in the past, but it is built on top of Azure AI. And it uses the advanced AI and machine learning to amplify human experiences. It automates the content processing and it will transform the content into knowledge. Basically, if you have certain documents, like a prime example is if you're looking at, say, expense receipts. So we are talking about these conferences, and one of you is going to go to the project management conference in December. So you go to this conference. When you come back, you have all these receipts for restaurants, the food, and all those things. So in general, what you do is you just um, club all these receipts together, and then you have an expense form. You fill out the expense form, attach those receipts, and send it to your HR department or someone. So what we did in one scenario is where, yeah, you can send those things to your expense department, but what it does is as soon as that email comes through, it will extract those receipts from the email. Basically, you send it to a shared mailbox. It will extract the receipts from that email, put it in a SharePoint document library, and it will basically extract who the merchant is, what the address was, what the actual amount was, plus say you gave some tip and all that amount will everything will be extracted and put into a SharePoint list. And from there you can write workflows where it can just send it to your accounting system or send it to your SQL database, whatever you want to do with it. So that's just a basic example, and I'm going to show you some of those examples in today's demo. Um, the main thing with SharePoint Syntex is there are a couple of custom model types. So one is document understanding. So um, another prime example is like if you're working in a consulting environment where you have contract documents and work orders and so forth. So when you send this contract documents or you receive these contract documents, you need to capture certain information from that particular document and put it in a SharePoint list or a SQL database, whatever it is. Um, Also, you could have some forms which you want to process. One of the examples which, or one of the projects which we did was, it was for a mass arbitration with a law firm. So there are certain organizations who have these forms listed out, and if organization gets into a like a big lawsuit nowadays, there are like a lot of mass arbitrators where you can just fill out, like if it's just like $3,000 claim or something, you fill out this particular form, and you send it to whoever is getting sued. And then there is this middle organization who will assign an arbitrator and all those things. So that form, when that form used to come to this law firm, they had some staff members who would look at those forms and extract the data and put it into a SQL database. So we use the form processing to extract the data, like if there are any checkboxes and all that stuff, it would extract all that data and put it in a SharePoint list. And then they had created some Power BI reports, which would give them an idea, like basically there was a map where, hey, we are getting a lot of cases from, say, California. How many cases are coming in? How much has been resolved, and those kind of things. So we are going to look at a simple form processing also today. And the best part about the form processing is it doesn't need to be typed in. So if you have like, and today I'm going to demo, say, a restaurant survey form. So um, some forms will be typed in like, okay, I liked the chicken lasagna or whatever it is, or some of them might be handwritten. And the best part is this particular tool will extract the handwritten data and put it into the SharePoint list. Um, so basically, the first one is the document processing. So it uses artificial intelligence models to automate classifications of files and extraction of information. Basically, what it is you'll have to define what kind of document it is. You'll have to specify, like, how does the AI or the machine learning identify that this is a document of a contract or a work order kind of stuff. And then what kind of information are you extracting from this particular document? In a law firm or in a legal scenario, if there are lawsuits filed, you might have a plaintiff and a defendant. So you need to capture who the plaintiff is and who the defendant is and put it in appropriate fields. Um, so the deal is that you need to basically specify, okay, this is the information I need to track. But in order to train the system, you need to specify where I can find this information. Or you can have regular expressions. For example, for a date field, there is already a predefined template defined for date field. But there could be a case number, and I'll be demoing that, where it starts with SC, and then there is SC to represent Supreme Court, and then 5-digit numbers. So you can define those regular expressions so it understands, okay, what am I looking for? Now, there could be a scenario where there could be multiple case numbers in the same document referring, like this case number might be referring to some other case numbers. So you can define, like, okay, I'm looking at a case number in like the first page or maybe in this first few characters, and then the machine will start understanding all of those things. Um, so as I mentioned earlier, it works best with unstructured documents such as letters, contracts, as I talked about, legal documents and so forth. And then basically while you're extracting the data, it needs to have text that can be identified with phrases or patterns, like where can I find this data kind of stuff. Then when you're building these models, as I said earlier, that this is based on the Azure AI, but on the SharePoint side, when you're using the SharePoint Syntex, you basically create a content center. It's basically another site collection within your SharePoint Online environment, and you can manage all your models over there. And a model is basically, if you're looking at, say, a contract, that's a model. And how do you identify a contract? So you train the machine that this is a typical model, typical contract. Then what kind of information am I extracting from it? So you need to have, and when we get to the demos, I'll explain this, but you need to have like 5 different samples to train um, the SharePoint syntax for contracts or for extracting the document. So you need to have 5 samples, which are called positive samples, and 1 negative sample explaining, like, if you find something like this, then this is not a um, actual contract document or so forth. Um, and that's only for document processing. When you get to form processing, you just need to provide 5 samples. It doesn't need to, you don't need to have a 6 sample, which is a negative sample or anything. Then on SharePoint document library, I'm not sure if how many of you have used content types in the past with SharePoint. So when you deploy a model to a SharePoint document library, it is deployed as a content type with columns to store the information which you have extracted. And I'll explain when we look at the demo and all that stuff. Classifiers are used to identify and classify documents that are uploaded to the document library. As I said, you need to have like 5 samples and a 6th negative sample, which will identify in a scenario of a contract. It will identify that this is a contract document, or if you have a work order, then this is a work order kind of stuff. And then extractors are like, what information am I pulling out of this document? So just to simplify it, it's basically the data points which you're pulling out of this particular document. And then these are some of the limitations. So basically what it is OCR technology to scan PDF images and TIFF files. So the text should be like readable kind of stuff. Though I've seen with this law firm, the law firm had received so basically the plaintiff law firms, what they do is like they might fill out a document, then sign it by hand, and then they will scan it. So one of the plaintiff law firms scanned this document, which was like really fading out and kind of stuff. So it was really hard to read it. Surprisingly, when we deployed this solution, the system actually picked up the fields from that really bad document which was scanned, and it pulled up all the information. It's basically Office files. It's truncated at 64,000 characters. While we are doing the training, it does have a 20-page limit. And I'll talk about, like, I have another project where what we did was yeah, they were looking to extract information. It works great in the scenarios where you're pulling out certain fields, but they wanted to pull out the clauses from this particular document. So there was a particular section, they pull out these clauses and then they respond to those clauses. So that for that particular scenario, we cannot use the content processing, but Power Automate provides you another solution, and which I'll be demoing as well. Then the OCR is JPEG, PNG, or PDF. Basically, you need to remove passwords from PDFs. So if it's a password lock document, then it won't be processed. Combined file size used for training per collection must not exceed 50 MB, and PDF documents shouldn't have more than 500 pages. So basically, if you have more than 500 pages, which even with law firms, I haven't reached that limit yet. For images, dimensions must be between 50 by 50 and 10,000 by 10,000 pixels. For PDF files, at the most 17 by 17 inches, legal or A3 paper sizes or smaller. even though this thing says scanned documents should be high quality images, with this particular law firm, even though this particular PDF was not a high quality PDF, still it did a pretty good work at figuring out what was in that particular document. And then must use the Latin alphabets. Um, some of the file types that are supported are all of these file types. Currently, it supports these languages: English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. And then the second part of this syntax is the form processing. So this one does use the Power Apps AI Builder form processing to create models. Um, so the thing is, the way all of this is integrated together is from Power Apps also, it uses Power Automate. So when you drop a document into SharePoint library, yeah, it processes it through a Power Automate flow, and I'll show you that. And it's part of the AI Builder process. So just in case, if you want to like extend that flow, okay, I've extracted all the documents and I've put it in the SharePoint list, all the fields are populated and all that stuff. Um, Someone has a question. Oh, it's about how can they access the recording. Um, so um, so basically, you can use that flow to extend the actual what all information you have extracted. And if you want to put it in a separate SharePoint list or even into a SQL database, you can do that as well. Um, and we'll, when I get to the demos, I'll show it to you. Um, Again, AI models uses machine learning technology to identify and extract key value pairs and table data from structured or semi-structured documents. Um, AI Builder form processing, now it supports like 73 languages, and Microsoft keeps on increasing this. This is based on like April or May data, so some of this stuff might have changed. Um, Requirements mostly similar to document processing, what we talked about, but the TIFFs cannot be used for training the form processing. Okay. And here are some of the scenarios and use cases. So you have tracked data from invoices with form processing. So, and I'll be showing a demo where our office invoice, when it comes in, if I put it in a certain library, it will extract all the information like how much the invoice data is. So I've put a video also on YouTube, and surprisingly, it did help a few clients on how to process invoices because they're getting tons and tons of emails, and this did simplify a lot of stuff for them. Um, and then track information from contracts with document understanding. I worked with a consulting firm in Atlanta to basically streamline their contract processing stuff. So when the contracts come in, it recognizes who the client is, the address, um, just in case there is a dispute, what the email address should be used, and so forth. And it put it in a particular SharePoint list. And I think they then designed a flow because I'm not a Dynamics person, a Dynamics 365 person. They were able to push that data from SharePoint side to their Dynamics database. Um, so basically, this is going to allow us to um, previously what all the documents were inaccessible and someone had to open those documents. And these law firms are the law firms where we have deployed it. They're um, basically that has reduced a lot of their uh, like staff who used to use a lot of time to process those documents. So the productivity has increased a lot for them. Um, and then improve data processing to provide insights and analytics. So what they used to do is once they got this document, they used to capture certain information, key it into a SQL database and run reports out of it. Now everything just moves, like they get this set of documents in email. The flow runs, extracts the documents, puts it in a SharePoint library. The syntax goes in and does its stuff. And then another flow puts it in a SQL database, and now the reports are being generated. So all the effort which the users or the paralegals were taking, now they just have to look at certain key points and make decisions on how they need to proceed um, with the case. Okay. And automate order processing. So in retail market, if you're getting orders by email um, or by like online stuff, where someone is like filling out these orders on paper and then scanning it, you can process those orders. And I've seen a place where one of the other consulting companies had done it for a small mom and pop shop kind of stuff. Um, then there are certain pre-built models which Microsoft has already done, and I believe Microsoft is like coming up with some of these pre-models and all that stuff. So right now, there are two pre-built models which Microsoft has provided, and we'll look at that. So it's basically pre-trained to recognize documents and the structured information in documents. And it does a really good job. It doesn't have to, like, especially the receipts thing. Like 2 weeks back, I was out with our client for dinner, and so I had the actual receipt on what all food was ordered and the one which I signed for the credit card, and I put it next to each other on my table, took a screenshot and sent it to the email. So when I looked at that screenshot which came up, it was like when I took the screenshot like this, it had like tilted the other way, but still the syntax actually recognized the restaurant name, address, the tip amount, the actual amount, and actually it did show me like what all stuff was ordered. And we'll look at the demos once we. Um, and then these are created and managed in the content center, and I'll show it to you. Um, so there are certain restrictions also with that. So only English language invoices are um, able to be processed, and only from United States. And the sales receipts are from Australia, Canada, United States, Great Britain, and India are supported. And again, Microsoft keeps on updating that. So in the future, there might be some more countries where this could be processed then. Um, so text embedded PTFs are best to eliminate the possibility of error in character extraction. Again, there are like 2000 pages can be processed. File size must be less than 50 MB. Licensing, now this is again, Microsoft keeps on changing this licensing. So organizations should have a subscription to SharePoint Syntex. And then each syntax user was going to create or create the models and all that stuff need to have license for them. Okay. And then licensing required for applying document and understanding model to a library, creating a form processing model via the entry point in library. Um, so some of this has been changing. So when I started working with Syntex, you had to buy the AI builder credits. Now they have changed it with certain number of users do get, if you have like Power Apps license, then you get these many credits and so forth. Um, so and we'll talk about some of the licensing and how you can get around, like when you're using Power Automate flows for the AI stuff, because it falls under the premium licensing model. What I recommend with my clients is to have a service account and you develop the flow using the service account, because when you're doing the Automate Cloud thing, it is going to run under that service account. So you don't have to keep on using the licenses, so forth. Um, so cost of running models, running document understanding is included in the cost of SharePoint Syntex license. Form processing models use the AI builder capacity. That's what I was talking about, that you need to have a AI builder license. So this thing for 300, and this has changed now. That's what my understanding is. For 300 or more SharePoint Syntex licenses for SharePoint Syntex in the organization. So that is actually still true. For 300 or more SharePoint Syntex licenses, you do get 1 million AI Builder credits. For less than 300 licenses, you must purchase AI Builder credits, but certain credits are available. So if you have the Power Automate or Power Apps license, then you do get certain credits. Um, so, and I've returned over here, the Microsoft will be providing 3,500 AI Builder credits per SharePoint Syntex license per month. And it's pooled at the tenant level with a maximum allocation of 1 million credits per month. So you can go to the Power Apps license site and look at that to keep yourself updated. And this is the stuff that I was talking about. If you have this per user app, you get 250 AI builders service credits. If you go with this particular option, you get the 500 AI builder credits. But using the 3,500, unless you're a heavy user of SharePoint Syntax, then you might have to look at buying those extra AI builder credits. So the way, unfortunately, I cannot demo this particular piece, so I've created some screenshots because SharePoint Syntax is already set up in my environment. So basically, these are some of the steps. So you basically go to the 365 admin, click on setup, and then you go in the files and content section, select automate content understanding, and then you click on get started. And then you can specify whether you want it in certain selected sites or all the sites. Um, so you can select select that no SharePoint libraries will be using it. If you manage multiple environments, then it will ask you like which environment do you want this to be deployed to. And then you create, as I mentioned earlier, the content center is nothing but just a SharePoint site collection. So you basically specify the content center name, the site address, and so forth. Okay, so let's look at our first demo. So as I mentioned, so the first one is, so if you go to your Power Automate portal, you'll see that you have an AI builder on the left-hand side. And you can just go to explore and play around with this thing. So for example, if I want to like look at extract information from receipts, okay, so I can upload a new one, and this is the receipt which I was talking about. Okay, if you see, it's like I uploaded it in this fashion. And if you see now, it did pull up that I went to Graham and Dunn, the merchant address, the transaction date, and what all items were purchased. So it will give you everything, and it actually tracks all of that stuff. And if you hover over it, it will show you what information was tracked. And it will, if you see at the bottom, it says the confidence score, like how confident the system is that it has got the right information. So if you just keep on hovering on all of that stuff, it will show you the information. If you scroll down, it will show you that the subtotal was $57, the tax was this, and whatever the tip amount was. So if you notice that the tip amount was on the separate receipt, but it still captured all of that data, even though there are like two documents over here, it did capture everything within this particular um, like in one go, it captured both those documents and the information. So it shows you that this one was the tip and the confidence score was 95%. And then if you look at this one was the total after adding the tip. Similarly, if you look at the invoices thing, um, I can go and pull up our invoice. And if you see over here, it does pull up all the data. And if you scroll down, it will show you all the description on what all stuff was, what the invoice date is, when the invoice is due, and so forth. Okay, so you can play around with all of this stuff to get yourself familiar with this. There are a lot of stuff where we did another project where the data which was being extracted from these legal documents, they wanted to categorize it, like whether there is an organization name, what the date was, and so forth. So you can look at these things like if you see over here, now this is the um, just a plain text which some they have typed, but I can say that I'm presenting at M365 users group on October 10th, 2022. And now if you click on analyze text, it will analyze it and it will say, oh, I found that October 10th, 2022 was the date time, so you can capture all of this information. So if I say Wingate Solutions is presenting and then analyze this text, it will capture that this is an organization. Okay, so this basically gives you an ability like, okay, if I have this particular document, you can just run this like a quick thing to figure out what can you do with the AI perspective. Then the next one, which I'm going to demo is basically this is the content center. So by default, when you go to the content center, it will present you with this. It will show you the classification by model, what all classifications I have, and so forth. So if I go to my models, and I'm going to just do this last trained models. So we're just going to look at these two models today. One is I just pulled up some Supreme Court documents out and I'm just going to use that. But it's really easy to create a model. So you just click on create a model. And as I mentioned that these two are the pre-trained models which are already provided. One is the invoice processing, and then the second one is the receipt processing. But if those do not help your needs, then you can always click on custom document understanding and start building your own model. So in my scenario, I have this my invoices, which was used, my invoices and the Wingate receipt processing was done using the pre-built models. But this Missouri Supreme Court docket was done by a custom model. So if you click on this, the first step is generally to add your files. So you can upload your files and then allow it to processing. So if you see over here, right now I've already added these 5 files and then a resume format. Because as I mentioned, you need to have a 5 positive files, 5 positive documents or samples, and 1 negative sample. So then you go to the train classifier. And then here is where I'm saying that, is this a file an example of Missouri Supreme Court docket? And it is not a Supreme Court docket. So you go to the next one. And if you see over here, the PDF document has been extracted into a text. So if you see over here, and yeah, this is a yes. The next one also I mark it as yes, 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 and yes. The next step is training of it. Okay. So you can, like in contract documents, you can say that on the very top, it should say master contract document. In this scenario, I've just used some first word sentence supreme and so forth. It was just an example, so I use that. Or actually, there's no filing date thing. These, I'll explain this. These are basically the model references. So once I'm done with that, I can upload a sample document just to test it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is when you go to the train, once you have specified that this is what I'm looking for and I click on train model, it should show you matches over here. And on the right hand side, it shows you that the accuracy was 100%. Okay. Um, and I'll show you one of the demos where we'll look at what kind of errors you might get. Okay. Then you go to this extractors. Extractors are basically fields which you're going to pull out of the document. Okay. So over here, what I've done is I'm looking at the filing date. So as mentioned, it is looking at those 6 documents. And then on the first document, I'm saying, yeah, there is no label for that. On the second one, and let me show you the document first, like how the document is structured. So that will give you an idea. Um, So if you see, this is the typical legal document, and if you see that it has been stamped over here in blue, where it has when it was file date and so forth. Okay. So when you go back to this particular stuff, you'll see that for filing date, you need to look at, and this one was the blue text which was captured over here. Oops, sorry. I'm not going to save it anyways. So basically, you're looking at, just go back, and so all you have to do is basically capture this to let it know basically that this is where I'm going to look at the date. Similarly, it's on this one, I'll find where the date is. And so I mark each and every file where I'm going to find the file date. Again, the next step is going to be the training. And since the document changed, because I accidentally highlighted something, it's going to do the training model again. And now it has found all the matches. So if you go back over here, you'll find the exact matches for each of those documents, and it will list over here what the prediction is. If you go to the filing date, um, it will show you where exactly it is going to find it and so forth. Okay, and it's just a phrase list that this is how the date is going to be structured. Okay. And then again, you can just test it by uploading a sample document. So the one which I wanted to show you right now is the um, case number, which is starts with SC and the 5-digit number. So if you go over here, you have this SCN. And if you notice over here, I have marked it over here. The second one is marked over there. The third one is marked down over there. Fourth one is marked over here, and fifth one over there. Now, if you go back over here, and for a moment, I'm going to change this to anywhere in the file. And I click on save and train. So if you notice now it has started training again. Now it finds a mismatch over here. So if you go to that particular document, and if you notice, it has found this number over here, but if you scroll down, it has found another number which it references. So if you go over here, you'll notice that there are 3 numbers which it found. So how do we resolve this issue? And if you go back over here, this is basically the explanation that SC and any 5-digit number, that's the phrase list which I'm looking for. And that's how it is going to identify that document. So if you go to, I can say just look at the beginning of the file. And I can specify what the position end position is, like look only up to the first 104 characters, okay, or 104 lines, whatever it is. And then you click on save and train. And what it is going to do is it's going to now retrain it, and you'll find out that now it matched and now it has found just the case number that I'm looking for. If you had to like put some other information, like if you wanted to put another explanation, so Microsoft does provide you all of these already built-in templates. So if you're looking for a credit card number, if you're looking for a currency, if you're looking for social security number, dates, all of that has already been provided by Microsoft, even the email address and so forth. Okay, so you could use some of these, or you can create your own template by clicking on new and blank. Okay, so once you have defined that and you click on exit training, and this is another example which I wanted to show you is the respondents. So if you go over here, I've marked who the respondents are. But when you go to the training part, over here, what I have said is how do I actually get the respondent? So I can specify that before the actual label that I'm looking at, there could be some of these characters prior to that. Okay. Again, that is provided by Microsoft. So if you go back and say from a template and click on before label and click on add, it actually picks up all of that information for you. Like it goes through all those 5 sample files and it will pick it up for you. If there is, and again, this machine learning is a continuous learning process. So if there are certain files where the plaintiffs are coming up with weird thing, then you just come back over here and put that phrase in there and then retrain it. And the next time it will capture that information. Or you can create, so let me cancel this thing out. Or you can just go over here and create your regular expression, a phrase list, or a proximity, like you'll find this from 20 words from this thing or so forth kind of stuff. So you can define your own explanations and then train the model. So in this scenario, 83 is still a good accuracy where for some reason, this particular document is not able to recognize all of this stuff. So sometimes you have to play with your stuff to figure out whether I can get up to 90% or 100% accuracy. Once that is done, you basically go and add a library where this needs to be deployed. So right now I've deployed it to the legal documents. So each time you change or you add a new extractor or train the machine, you have to click on sync all to make sure that it's synchronized with your SharePoint library. Once it is done, you're good to test it. And before we test that, let me go and show you the next one, which is the My Invoices thing. Now with the My Invoices, Microsoft has already done all the work for you. So you don't have to like add those 5 samples and 1 negative sample. You don't need to do that. These are the fields which Microsoft has already determined that for invoices, this is what you're looking for. I just added a file to analyze to figure out whether it's getting the right data. But all of this work is already done by Microsoft. Okay. So this one was the invoices. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to drop a document in this legal documents document library and see how the processing starts. So when we do that, now it takes a few minutes, and what we are going to do while this thing is processing, we are going to go and add a couple of receipts over here. So I'm going to add 3 receipts out over here. And let's go back on this one. Let's refresh it. Takes a few seconds to a minute to get back the information that we're looking for. And while it's doing that, I'm going to also, because we only have another 15 minutes, let me show you another tool, which is basically if you have a customized form, and this is one of my customized forms. Um, Basically, it's a restaurant survey form, and these are some of the questions I'm asking, which has a checkbox and so forth. So let's make sure that this is still running. Okay, so it captured all this data. It did tell me what the content type is. It is a Missouri Supreme Court docket. It captured the filing date, who the respondents are, and the case number is also located over here. So that's how unstructured document and like real life, there are like a lot of documents which you can, a lot of data you can extract from these documents. We have been capturing like the court number, the plaintiff name, in certain scenarios, even the social security number, um, the filing date. If the plaintiff needs a response by a certain date, then what the due date is. A lot of information can be captured using syntax. If I go over here and let's refresh this one. And if you see over here, it has captured um, the merchant name, and I went to Walmart. It even captured the merchant address. If a phone number was listed, it will capture the phone number, the subtotal, the tip amount, and the actual total. Now you might be wondering, for this Chipotle receipt, why we didn't get the merchant name? If you see over here on Chipotle, it has a logo. So as I said, it needs to be a text information to extract it. So that's the reason it couldn't extract that this is Chipotle receipt. So in that scenario, someone comes in and puts in the data over here. Okay. So when you have a customized form like this, now how do you train SharePoint Syntex or Power Apps to recognize this form and extract the data? So for that, what Microsoft has done is if you go to Automate, there are like these view models or view form processing model details. So you click on it, and right now I've already set up this thing. So if I click on Manage in AI Builder, it goes to Power Apps portal, and it will show me the form processing stuff. Just give it a few seconds, it should show up. So if you see over here, the training model has already got a 99% hit. So if I click on edit model, for some reason it has gone way slow. On. While it's doing that, I'm going to upload a couple of documents over here, so I don't have to. Reload again. Not sure if Microsoft is having issues. But basically what it is you first define your fields which you're trying to extract. So in this scenario, you see on the back, it will be showing why or why not. Oh, there we go. OK, so basically here is where you'll be first defining the fields which you're trying to extract. So if you go over here and click on field, you can define what the field name is. Or if you just click on add, these are few of the options, and Microsoft is still playing with this multi-page table or single page table where you can on invoices, you can get the details out of the invoice. The checkboxes, and surprisingly, it does work with radio buttons. I tried it in one location and it did work with the radio buttons as well. So these are the checkboxes which it can look at, and the fields are like basically text fields. So that's how I have defined all these fields over here. And right now I can just define something, checkbox, just for testing. Done. And now it has added this testing checkbox. Then I click on next. And over here, as I mentioned, you just have to have 5 samples. You don't have to have a negative document or anything like that. So I've uploaded some samples over here, which are similar to this. So this is like a sample thing. And then what I do is I click on next. And now what it does is it will show you all these 5 samples over here. And now if you see anything which is marked green is already detected or it already trained. OK, so now what I can do is I can click on this one which is not trained, and it knows that this particular field was added, but it has not been assigned to anything. So I can just assign it to testing. Similarly, I go to the next one. So I have to go and train all those 5 documents which I've uploaded. So again, click on that, testing. And that's it. So, and if you are in a scenario where a particular field is not in this particular document, you can always go over here and say, right now, these are the fields which are not part of this document. So I've marked as unavailable in this document, but I can switch it back saying available in document and then specify where it is. OK, so once I go to the next one, now I can click on train, and looking at the time, I just don't want to do that right now, but I'll just click on train and it will keep on running. But what it does is the documents which I had uploaded earlier, if you see over here, it has extracted all the data from it, like why or why not. So let's click on one of this document and hold on a second. So if you see this document was hand filled, so I've clicked over here, clicked over there, and I've said why or why not food is good, but still need friendly stuff. And I purposely did it with a really bad handwriting, and it still picked up that data. Oops, where did it go? I accidentally closed it. So if you see over here, it did extract food is good, but still need friendly stuff. Yes, birthday for our kid. It did pull up. I did not get the kid thing, but you get the idea that how it can pick up all the information. What was the dish order? That was again written by hand. So it does get the spicy chicken additional comments, and then all the checkboxes and so forth. So in the background, what it does is it actually creates a Power Automate flow. So right now it's not trained. So if I go to the published version and I click on the flow which has been used, it shows me the flow which has been used, and it is this one. So this is basically the flow. It's looking at a PDF, PNG, JPEG, JPG, and this whole thing has been created by Microsoft. It's the 365 service. I have not created it. It gets the file content. It uses Azure AI predict thing, and then it updates the SharePoint list. And what I'm showing you over here is that if I wanted to look at the core data, or I want to extend this, because if you look over here in real world, rate service 5, rate service 4, rate service 3, rate service 2, rate service 1 does not make sense. You have to look at how many people have rated our service as 5, how many of them have rated 3. So you have to make sure that this data is pulled into a database where it only shows one value for rate service, whether it's 5 or 3. So that's where you use the Power Automate to extend that service. So if you see over here, let me just remove that. And if I'm searching for, say, rate service 3, if you see the predict connector will give you all of these options. And then basically it shows you all the confidence score and all that stuff. And you can click on rate service 3 value, which is the actual value which has been extracted. So you can say, you can have a logic. If the rate service 5 was selected, then send the data as 5. If rate service 4 was selected, then send the data as 4, and so forth. So this is how you can extend your already generated workflow and create your own or write your own logic where you want to push that data. One last thing which I wanted to show you is there is this, if I create, say, test M365, I'm just going to show you certain things that you can look at. So there is a AI builder connectors, and there is one thing which is there is a recognize text in an image or a PDF document. So you can pass a PDF document to this thing, and it is going to extract all the text from there. So we used it in a scenario where the law firm was looking at what the plaintiff is claiming, that you did this thing wrong, this thing wrong, this thing wrong. So it pulls up all those clauses, what the plaintiff has claimed, and then it puts it in a database so the attorneys can look at it. And certain times the plaintiff law firms have a standard way of, like, if there are a lot of lawsuits based on the same thing, then XYZ plaintiff law firm will have a certain format, certain wording, and so forth. So the law firm can decide, like, if we get it in this particular format, our response should be this. So we went to a place where the AI actually looks at it, extracts the data, and then if there is a standard response for that data, it actually generates the response document for the lawyers. So the lawyers just have to go to the response document and just make their changes, and then they're sending the documents back to the plaintiff law firm. So that's all right at 1 p.m. This is what I wanted to share with you on SharePoint Syntex and how you can use it within your organization.